Shanti Shanti. Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Adgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormamritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us offer our salutations to Lord Krishna, the son of Vasudeva Devaki, who gave immense joy to the parents, the spiritual preceptor of the universe. Let us pray to him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. We have been studying Karma Yoga. The spiritual path given by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. All our spiritual efforts begin with tremendous faith in the presence of the Divine Lord. Then everything becomes easy. People undergo lots of sufferings in life on account of various factors. Sufferings come to teach lesson. There are so many ways of learning. One way is through suffering. Suffering which cannot be avoided. Well, everything is in one's own nature. If he struggles hard, having faith in the God, then everything turns out good. Lord Krishna says in the verse number 33, Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha prakriter jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kinkarishyati. Even a wise man acts in accordance with his own nature. Beings will follow nature. What can restraint do? People form their own nature by performing actions, good or bad. So they have shaped themselves in a particular fashion. And so they act accordingly. One has to struggle very hard to shape the character. Some plants grow tall and slender, while others shrubby and stout. Some fruits taste sweet, others bitter. The varying natures in the vegetation cannot be changed, but they can be augmented and enriched. Variation in nature is much more pronounced in the human than in the other species. Dispositions are divergent even among the enlightened. One is an introvert and another extrovert. Every individual, every being is distinct in its nature. Which nature he has formed himself or herself. A saint is given to devotion and a sage to discrimination. The yogi disciplines the mind while the man of action lovingly serves mankind. Attaining perfection is a thread of unity in the midst of mental variations. Each must be allowed to encourage to evolve in line with his temperament. So, the ideal master will always direct the persons according to their nature. The earthy among men are bound fast to things mundane. Obstructing their worldly ways avails nothing. Inducing them to evolve in tune with nature helps their growth. That means slow sublimation of their nature is the greatest service that can be rendered to them. The man, on account of his involvement in the world and worldly people, living in worldly environment, worldly situations, he develops worldly nature. He becomes more and more selfish, more and more jealous, and develops all negative qualities. And so, what's the way? The only way is, first of all, they should recognize their mistakes and try sincerely to improve the character. So, sublimation of the nature is very much taught by the saints. Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel, God gives to different people what they can digest. The mother doesn't give fish pilau to all her children. All cannot digest it. So she prepares simple fish soup for some. Everyone cherishes his own special ideal and follows his own nature. An individual complained to Sri Ramakrishna that he found it impossible to turn his mind Godward. It was asked of him as to what was the thing or being that he loved most. The man pondered for a while and said that he was inordinately fond of the goat that he reared. A suggestion was then made to him to think of that goat as imbued with divinity and meditate on it. The man did so and had his mind slowly turned Godward. Somehow we must see our mind turns towards God. There are so many ways of guiding the mind towards God. The success depends upon the master of the mind how the person is really struggling to turn the mind towards God. If the mind is turned towards worldly things and allow the mind to behave in its own way, then he loses all control over the mind and finally he becomes victim of the vagaries of the mind. So, taking control of mind is most essential in spiritual path. Indriyasya arthe ragadvesho vyavasthitau tayorna vashamagachet tauhyasya paripanthinau. Attachment and aversion for the objects of the senses abide in the senses. Let none come under their sway, because they are his enemies. Man suffers. Why? Because of his own senses. He yields to temptations, and temptations lead him to bondage. Each sense exerts tremendous pressure on him, and the result of their combined attack can very well be imagined. Listening can do harm in the same way as a deer is exposed to danger when it lifts its earlobes, hearing a noise, and runs about. By the touch of the female, the male elephant gets excited and is caught by the hunter. The moth which sights the flame is attracted to it, and it perishes by falling into it. Taste draws the fish to the bait. The smell of honey attracts the bee, and its legs stick to the fluid and sits on it. The cumulative effect of all these evils is that man is unable to escape from worldliness and is ever held in bondage. Life in the body and in the senses is not an end in itself. It is only a passing phase. Senses have been serviceable for the evolution of the subhuman into the human. Now the goal for the human is to evolve into the divine. Senses are stumbling blocks to it. They are therefore labeled the enemies of the spiritual aspirant. They require to be transcended. It is from attachments and aversions that they get their power to function. When these dualities are done away with, the senses cease to be enemies. Likes and dislikes are created by the egoistic attitude. When this hurtful attitude is changed into helpful devotional attitude, likes and dislikes melt away. The senses in their turn get tamed down. The function of the scriptures is to exhort man to change his attitude from the base to the noble. When the life for the individual is converted into the life for the Lord, the senses cease to be enemies. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when can desire and hatred, the enemies of man, be destroyed? These propensities of the mind prove themselves enemies when directed to worldly affairs. They become allies when directed to God. Desires for worldly things must be converted into the desire for God. Let man be annoyed with God and angry with him for not revealing himself. Desire and anger cannot be totally destroyed, but they can be transmuted. Then they become harmless. So a person must become wise. Otherwise, he will be carried away by the negative nature which he has imbibed. So many mishaps happen in life because of desire and anger. These are the worst enemies that one can ever think of. Once the desire arises in the mind, it keeps bugging, and the man becomes restless and helpless, and he loses his control, he loses balance of the mind, he loses power of thinking, he loses the power of discrimination. He becomes mad. In that mad, he commits most dangerous crimes. Thus he becomes a victim of sins. So one has to be really very cautious about entertaining desire and about the nature of anger. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushtitat swadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavaha. Better is one's own dharma, though imperfect, than the dharma of another well discharged. Better is death in one's own dharma, the dharma of another is full of fear. The purpose of this statement is that one should clearly go in one's own way, one's own nature. That's the point which we should note. Spiritual powers should always be used for beneficial measures and not for destructive purposes. Saints and sages, despite their intense penance, never boasted of the moral strength they had derived through such religious discipline. On the other hand, they applied the same to uphold the traditions, to shed ego, and to meditate. Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel, once a young man who had acquired extraordinary powers was sitting in meditation. He found his peace being disturbed. He looked around the cause of disturbance, and he traced the cause to a crane. He became terribly angry. So with an angry look, he gazed at the crane. Immediately, the power of the gaze was so powerful, the bird fell down and died. The young man thought that he had acquired supernatural power, and a kind of ego developed in his mind. He tried to display the same to a woman known for her chastity, but she said, "Well, I am no crane." Without this young ascetic disclosing, that woman came to know that he had that power by which the crane was killed. And the ascetic was surprised, and then the modest woman, she instructed him to go to a butcher to learn a lesson much more. He was again surprised. Of all the people to go to a butcher? Well, When he went there, what did he see? That butcher was deeply engrossed in his work. He failed to take cognizance of the presence of this ascetic. But after some time, he sought to know from him whether he was sent by the woman whom he had tried to curse. When this butcher told like this, the saint became again shocked. He wondered how the butcher could recall these incidents and read what transpired in his mind so correctly. The butcher's success in life was due to the service of his aged parents. He maintained his house in a trim condition and had taken every care to attend to their comforts. Before commencing his day's work and after closing the shop, he knelt at their feet. His affection to the aged couple enabled him to receive their blessings, and thus he could face any threat. This story was related by sage Markandeya to Yudhishthira in the Mahabharata to highlight the significance of Swadharma. Everyone taking pleasure in adhering to the duties enjoined upon him. What is needed is doing the duty properly with love and devotion is very important, not by imitating others. Draupadi assured Satyabhama that she used no talisman, nor applied any charm, nor chanted any mantra to win the affection of her husbands. The warmth of affection of a woman, the patience she exhibits by overlooking her spouse's weaknesses, serving him with dedication, sacrificing her self-interest, and understanding his moods, will all make him totally drawn towards her. The implication is that Arjun's thought of desisting from fight and going in for the calm and peaceful life, the Brahmana is prompted by man's natural desire to shun what is disagreeable and embrace what is agreeable to the senses. He should on no account yield to this weakness. A professional farmer, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, does not lose courage and continues to cultivate the field even if there be a terrible drought for 12 long years. But a weaver who takes a tilling for a change of occupation gets disheartened if rain falls for one season. A true devotee does not deviate from the path of devotion for any reason whatsoever. In life and death, he relies on the Lord. So performing one's duty with love and dedication is a significant message of Karma Yoga. And also, one should develop selfless nature by engaging oneself in selfless activities besides his worldly duties. That's the way how one should purify one's mind. One should definitely engage oneself in selfless activities. Arjun said, Atakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha anichannapi varshneya baladiva niyoditaha. Arjun asked Lord Krishna, O Krishna, impelled by what does man commit sin, though against his wishes, constrained as it were by force? Arjun asked this question. What drags people into committing sin? Though they don't want to do such things, still unwillingly they are dragged into it. Is there some force behind it? Often we come across this sin in our lives. We don't want to do certain things. We even know it is terribly wrong, but still some force seems to be pushing us. Go ahead and get it. It is all right. No wonder Arjuna asks Krishna, what is this? Lord Krishna clearly points out, Kama esha krodha esha rajoguna samudbhavaha mahashano mahapapma vidhyanimiga vairinam. It is desire, it is anger born of the quality of rajas, all sinful and all devouring. Know this as the enemy here in this world. The Blessed Lord says, it is nothing but personal desire. You are wanting it. Your desire overpowers your intelligent discrimination. It is a fight between your lower selfish desire and clear thinking. Such desire is caused by rajas. It is all consuming and it is a cause of sin. Remember this as your deadliest enemy. Selfish desire and the anger that comes out of that when you don't get it, you become terribly upset. Both the desire and the anger are caused by the rajas. Desire is the most destructive enemy of man. When this desire is obstructed, it transforms itself into anger. The Lord therefore treats both as one. It takes its origin in rajas and aggravates it further. As fire cannot be satiated by feeding it with fuel, desire cannot be appeased by supplying it with sense objects. The more it gluts, the more it craves. Sin increases in direct proportion to desire. It is therefore Satan, the arch enemy of man. Time and again, man gets humiliated because of his being victim to lust and greed. Still he is unable to recoil from them and give his thought to God. These things are highlighted in the story of Mahabharata. If you study the Mahabharata, lots of lessons are there to learn. How this anger caused terrible warfare. You know, Drupad, the great king, was brought before Drona by Arjun. Drona had told Arjun that he should bring Drupad and drop him on his feet, because Drona was insulted by Drupad on one occasion. So he became terribly angry. Now when Drupad was humiliated, Drupad became angry. So he did tapas, he did a kind of fire sacrifice, wherein he resolved to have a daughter who would marry Arjun, and he should get a son who would kill Drona. The son's name was Drishtadyumna, daughter's name is Draupadi. Like the story goes. Anger, jealousy, these are the very common nature of worldly people. Immediately can make out. Worldly person means a person who is having jealousy, hatred, anger, all these in full measure. Dhumena vriyate vannir yatadarsho malena cha yatolbena vrto garbhastata tene damavratam. As fire is enveloped by smoke, as a mirror by dust, as an embryo by the womb, So is this covered by that. This means the desire. The resplendent Atman is veiled in desire, which is in the three grades corresponding to the predominances of the three gunas. Desire, dominated by Sattva Gun, is like fire being choked with smoke. A little blowing will set it ablaze and the smoke will disappear. Discrimination, likewise, drives out the thin cloud of sattvic desire and reveals Atman as it is. Some effort is required to remove the dust on a mirror. Even so, Rajasic desire demands strenuous attempt for its removal. Lastly, Tamasic desire is compared with an embryo in the womb. Time and regulated living are the factors for the embryo to develop and be delivered as a baby. Time and self-preparations are necessary to eliminate the deep-rooted tamasic desire. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, as a patch of cloud hides the blazing sun, Maya in the form of desire hides Ishvara. When a cloud disappears, the sun becomes visible. When desire disappears, Ishvara reveals himself. So the desire must be replaced by the desire to have the vision of God. So one has to go to the state of desirelessness. In the sense, he should not hanker after any kind of worldly desires, which will obstruct a person going onward in the spiritual path. Avratam jnanametena jnanino nityavairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena nalenacha. O Arjun, wisdom is covered by this constant enemy of the wise in the form of desire, which is unappeasable as fire. Desire, grown to the stature of greed, is a destructive force and an enemy to all human beings. But the ignorant among them, who come under its sway, hold it as a helpful friend. Whenever a setback and humiliation ensue from it, the destructive force of desire is momentarily detested as a treacherous factor in the makeup of man. But this feeling vanishes as quickly as it dawns. The unwary ignorant choose to ally with it always. But the case of the knowing man is different. Both while under the influence of desire and while holding it in abeyance, the wise man views it as his sworn enemy. He likes no alliance with it. Still, in spite of him, it steals into his heart, assuming innumerable forms and trying to allure him. It is therefore the constant enemy of the wise. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the indicator in the balance moves away from the middle point when there is more weight on one side. The mind of man moves away from God, allured by the weight of lust and greed. Lust and greed. These are terrible baits which obstruct the person going towards God. Indriyani manobuddhi asya adhishthana muchyate etair vimohetyesha jnanamavritya dehinam. The senses, mind and intellect are said to be its seat. By this it deludes the embodied by veiling his wisdom. The fort that protests the enemy has to be spotted out before laying siege to it. The foe of desire has usurped the fort of the heart of man. He has captivated the senses, mind and intellect. Perforce, he makes them serve his base pleasures. The senses are sent out on lustful missions. The mind is made to cognite these pleasurable desires. The intellect is directed on designs that are vulgar. These instruments that are evolved to serve the Supreme are, alas, utilized in extravagance. The mind directed to sensuous things, he is like a holy man living in the midst of hooligans, or like a wealthy man living in a slum. Tasma tvamindriyanyadau niyamya bharatarshava papmanam prajahi hyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Therefore, O Arjun, control the senses at the outset. First kill it, the sinful desire, the destroyer of knowledge and realization. So the worst enemy is desire. Try to be desireless. Replace the worldly desire with spiritual, so that you will be able to go onward in spiritual path. Indriyani paranyahu indriyebhyah param manaha manasastu parabuddhi yo buddhehe paratastu saha. They say the senses are superior to the body. Superior to the senses is the mind. Superior to the mind is the intellect. And one who is superior even to the intellect is he, the self. So Atman is the everlasting, most powerful consciousness in everyone. And one should focus on that. Then he will be able to control the senses properly. Evam buddhehe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasanam. Thus, knowing him who is superior to the intellect and restraining the self by the self, destroy, O Arjun, the enemy in the form of desire, or to conquer. Restrain the lower self by the higher self. Subdue the lower mind by the higher mind. It is difficult to conquer desire because it is of a highly complex and incomprehensible nature. So, how to do that then? One should use the power of discrimination. One should cultivate dispassion. One can acquire these qualities by constant practice. Then only one can conquer the senses. Otherwise it is very difficult. So generally people are carried away by the vagaries of the mind and the senses. The senses drag the person to sense objects. The man is constantly under severe temptation, and so he loses his balance. So one has to really note these things and try to control the senses, assert his mastership, have firm faith in the God, do selfless activity, don't develop attachment, transform attachment to non-attachment. Non-attached. Non-attachment is a spiritual force. Attachment is a negative force. Attachment brings misery and suffering. Non-attachment makes you peaceful and calm. So this concludes Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, the divine path given by Lord Krishna. In the month of July 1st, Sunday, consecration ceremony to celebrate the completion of the construction of phase 1 of Sri Ramakrishna Universal Temple will be held at the temple site from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So you can participate in this program. Chant the name of the Lord and His glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust raging furiously within. O name, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self, drowned deep in the waves of his bliss, tasting his nectar at every step, bathing in his name that baths for weary souls. Various are thy names, O Lord. In each and every name thy power resides. No times are set, no rites are needful for chanting of thy name. So vast is thy mercy, how huge then is my wretchedness, who find in this empty life and heart no devotion to thy name. O my mind, be humbler than a blade of grass, be patient and forbearing like a tree. Take no honor to thyself, give honor to all. Chant unceasingly the name of the Lord. O Lord and soul of the universe, mine is no prayer for wealth or retinue, the playthings of lust or the ties of fame. As many times as I may be reborn, grant me, O Lord, a steadfast love for thee. A drowning man in this world's fearful ocean, he is thy servant, O sweet one. In thy mercy consider him as dust beneath thy feet. Ah, how I long for the day when an instant's separation from thee, O Lord, will be as 1,000 years, when my heart burns away with its desire, and the world without thee is a heartless void. Prostrate at thy feet let me be, in unwavering devotion, neither imploring the embrace of thine arms, nor bewailing the withdrawal of thy presence, though it tears my soul asunder. O thou who stillest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, and lead us from death to immortality. May all be free from dangers, may all realize what is good, may all be actuated by noble thoughts, may all rejoice everywhere, may all be happy, may all be free from disease, may all realize what is good, may none be subject to misery, may the wicked become virtuous, may the virtuous attain tranquility, may the tranquil be free from bonds, may the freed make others freed, may good betide all people, may the sovereign righteously rule the earth, may all beings ever attain what is good, may the worlds be prosperous and happy, may the clouds pour rain in time, may the earth be blessed with crops, may all countries be freed from calamity, may holy men live without fear. May the Lord, the destroyer of sins, the presiding deity of all sacred works, be satisfied. For he being pleased, the whole universe becomes pleased. He being satisfied, the whole universe feels satisfied.